Hello! Hi, everyone. So good to connect with you. So, if you heard early in the week, I recorded a very juicy part 1 to how I kind of began to alchemize my story. So if you haven't heard part 1, definitely go listen to it. I know it's 51 minutes long, but it's a whole ass story. But yeah, I came back to do part 2. So the part 1 started around 2015, and this was really just when I had just gotten home from study abroad. I was about to graduate from college, and yeah, my life was just feeling at an internal rock bottom. And so we left off around when I came back from a trip and I met the love of my life. So this is just one of the weird ways that you just notice that feeling inside of you that's drawing you and pulling you. That's your intuition, and it's a gentle, soft, loving gesture, not an anxious I need to do this. Your intuition is kind of here, go there, why don't you try this one, kind of like that energy. It's really subtle, and as you begin to listen to it, you will grow this relationship. So I was working at this restaurant. Ironically enough, it was called interim, and I felt like I was in an interim in my life, an in-between. It was just funny. But I had really enjoyed the food there, and actually the chef was sober, which I thought was so cool. That was actually before I quit drinking forever. And one of the sous chefs was doing a beer dinner. In restaurants, they'll do a pairing dinner. They'll pair a wine with dinner, or they'll pair, in this instance, beer with dinner. And it was one of my favorite breweries in my hometown. And I was like, oh, well, it's for, someone I work with. I was not attracted to him. It wasn't that situation. It was I love food and I love this brewery's beer, so let's go. And I remember that is where I first saw my dream love. And it was funny because I went to a beer dinner by myself. And, I had literally decided last minute, I was gonna go. I hadn't bought my ticket. I didn't even know him at this point. Didn't know who he was, who was gonna be there. I was just feeling this call to go to this beer dinner. And I bought my ticket probably day before or whatever. And I show up by myself. I just did a lot of stuff by myself back then. I was a boss bitch. And yeah, I just remember there was this guy and he was leading the class, and I thought he was cute. I didn't really think anything of it, but then after the class, I went to go sit at the bar because I was going to wait for the sous chef to go to this other bar. And then he ended up sitting next to me. I mean, because the restaurant was closed, or they invited people to have a drink and then they closed. But I stayed till a long time, and he was also with his business colleague, and yeah, we were just talking for hours. And it's just funny to think that I was really building that connection. I had shared the story about the mushroom magic milkshake journey and the Milky Way, and really building this connection with there was something out there bigger than me. And feeling this like connection to it, but then also, getting random nudges to like go to this dinner that one of your coworkers is a part of, like things like that. Like I had no idea. And thank God I went because I met Davis, and the rest is history. And so we left off in the story like end of 2019 and 2020. So this was when I had mentioned electronic music. And my sister kind of showed it to me. I think it was around 2017, 2018 kind of era. I met Davis in 2019. So in that kind of timeline, me and my sister were like, oh, we love these songs, we love these beats, we want to make our own. And we had like gotten one of the computer programs as a gift one year, and I just remember I was like, oh my God, I just want to figure all this out. If you've ever tried to write music in a DAW and a digital audio workstation, it's like kind of a lot when you open it or just begin. So that was like the earliest times around 2018 when I was like, oh, I want to make this music. Like I want to be able to make beats like this. We should be able to figure it out. And, I don't know what it was, but I just still had to I had to keep listening and finding my sound. And I actually got the program, and that's when I started. And I wasn't as serious. I feel like that was just a small little thing on the side. And I'm just like laughing, realizing it. But what I just mean to say that I didn't pick it up and do it all the time. Now, later when I started DJing, like learning how to DJ, yeah, I was doing that a lot. I was doing that every day. And that's kind of like fast forward to 2019. And by this point, I had been living by myself since around 2016. So I had been living by myself for a few years. And I learned so much just being with myself and being by myself. And I love being alone. I love alone time. As a kid, I spent a lot of time in my room. And I also am learning that I am an introvert, and so I need alone time so that I can recharge. And here we go with the roller coaster again. So, living alone, great for me. I didn't need to be in another relationship. I mean, I was still off and on, but I had a lot of healing to do, and I had a lot of just beliefs. And, that was a time that I was really, I just was alone. So I heard my inner talk a lot. And I had been on this journey of really being curious of that. And, that's what led to blog posts and just being curious about this critical voice in my head and what it was doing and why, and, asking all these questions, which was also great because when my podcast was released in 2019, I was able to just talk about this stuff. It transformed from writing to speaking and sharing what I wanted to say. And that was really powerful for me to be able to have this experience, be really self-aware to how my internal space is going, but then to also have the books and the resources and the other kind of forms of knowledge to support me as I was trying out a new way. And so by the time I had met Davis, I was really being more intentional about doing like more inner work, like self-love and self-care, and really tending to my inner world. Because, you know, as I was reading through all of these books and these personal development stories, is like, this pain is not ours. Like, the pain that we have is ours, but, you know, so much gets passed on to us from our parents. Even when you look at things from a biological level, your parents are passing on their DNA. Traumatized people pass on more, you know, I'm trying to make sure I'm scientifically correct in what I say, but if you've ever seen like studies of how they study how trauma goes in generations. So if you look at, you know, your grandparents, and then they have your parents, and then they have you. If you look on, you know, for example, your mother's ancestry line, if you had a grandparent or a great grandparent who fought in a war, you probably have gotten a little bit of that. You know, it might be in a different form. You know, if someone takes on trauma that they don't and are not able to process, it gets passed down. And, you know, we can see, and this is what makes me so fascinated about epigenetics, just this idea that different DNA gets passed. DNA gets altered, and certain of expression of traits changes based on environmental factors. And that's just so fascinating, because if you are in like the psychology world, you know, there is this like quote unquote battle between nature and nurture. What is a reason for behavior? Is it nature or is it nurture? I personally think it's a little bit of both, because nature means your, you know, hereditary, like what genes you have and what gets passed along. And nurture is kind of the environment around you and what goes into that. You know, if you are around cigarette smokers, that's an environmental factor that can play into certain expressions and traits that you have. And it could even accidentally mutate and turn into cancer one day. Like, you never really know. And so I just remember I did a project on that in college. But I say all this because we look at our shit and we're like, damn, I just have so much shit. Something's wrong with me. Like, it's me. I'm the problem. But it's when we are able to see that this shit gets passed down, like the shit you carry is more than likely probably not all of yours, you know? And sometimes, like, we need to realize that, because I don't know how old I was in 2018 just off the top of my head, but it's like you're still growing into an adult. You're still forming your perceptions on life and what you believe to be true. And to really be able to not attach yourself to this traumatic experience or parts of your life, like to be able to look at it just from a detached lens, even if it's for like 2 minutes, like even just taking a break from latching on and clinging to your trauma, like that just felt so liberating to me, because it just felt so intertwined in my life for so long. And it was just powerful, really, just like that Milky Way moment, like to remember that I am on a planet in the middle of a galaxy, like where my problems are the tiniest, you know, like when you zoom out like that, shit gets really, really like put in perspective. And I had just felt so just, like anyone else, just knee deep in my own shit. And that's okay. Like, I mean, I probably went through times where I was frustrated with myself, and I think that was kind of connected to my inner voice and my inner critic. But this sense of detachment, and also what I was, gathering from just Eastern philosophy and how their way of life and relating to life and thinking and just everything feels so different. But seeing all of that put together and seeing that like detached lens to see my story and to see my trauma and to see everything just put in perspective, it's like I was able to have more compassion for myself. And I was able to, instead of feel mad at myself, I was beginning to have compassion for myself. And also, honoring that if you had a fucked up childhood, like reminding yourself that you did not deserve that and that you have every right to have the emotions that you do. And I think for many of us, we weren't allowed to have those big emotions. We weren't allowed to be angry. We weren't allowed to be upset. Like, if we showed our emotions, somebody might punish us, like I get it. And so it was like I was just seeing life from a completely new way. I was also, I think around then, maybe 2018, when I was at that restaurant, have been introduced to the artist way. And if you've been in my world, I joke around that it's like my Bible, but I fucking love that book. It's by Julia Cameron, and it's just like this perspective of connecting spirituality and creativity. And I was, at that phase in my life where I was writing, and I think I can't remember if I had started in 2019, but at one point I was posting my very first Instagram post. I wanted to add like beauty to social media that was just filled with BS, and this was like years ago, and it still feels like it is, but I think that's just social media for you. And yeah, it was called Madly in Love. It was like that was the name of my first blog, Madly in Love, and then it turned into Embrace Madness. But yeah, it just felt fun, like, because I had never thought I was creative. I think the extent of creativity, like for me, was making those like Canva things, but that was like words, and I was just using the stock photos to repurpose, but I was using words from my blog. And I think back then I would maybe see that as creative, like on Canva, but I hadn't really like made the connection of words and creativity. And so this was all around, I was just seeing these new lenses, like the creative lens. I was beginning to see the spiritual lens after, historically being an atheist, and I was forgiving myself and having compassion for my childhood and, what I went through. And just so much was happening, so much transformation. I had a pool, like life was so good. And so like when the pandemic happened and I was in restaurant industry, like I went on unemployment and I really realized, you know, how much I wanted to create. And in 2020, like I had all the time in the world because I didn't have to work. And that was the first time in my life that I didn't have to work to pay for bills or something. And it was just mind blowing because all I wanted to do was make podcasts and practice DJing and see if I could keep learning how to write music and continue on like this journey, this personal development journey, and just really realizing like, oh, well, I might be getting ahead of myself, but just really like having permission to just exist and create. And that was probably one of the first times I had really been like so connected to my channel. Just having all of this space and time, like I had all day and every day. And that's really the first taste of like what it felt like to be free from working, like from working. And I know a lot of people are like, what do you mean? But if you get what I'm saying, like, you know, like, I don't believe we were designed to work in these jobs. Like, I don't know. It's just crazy thinking about society and how we've evolved to get here, and just, it's all fucking mind-blowing. But pouring myself some bubble water. But where were we? So 2020, that was a really, really hard year in several ways. It's like you experience the duality of like everything you've ever wanted up until that point, and then also, you know, the worst possible thing. And there was a lot of grief in 2020. There was a lot of joy, but a lot of grief. I had also gotten pulled over for having weed in my car, which was crazy. And like, that was a setback that I had no idea. Like, that was crazy. Just the shame of getting arrested, the shame of dealing with that, the shame of like, well, for now this is permanent and you need a lawyer, like just so much. It was just ridiculous. And I felt like that kind of sent me into another kind of just not good. It was just very raw and very fragile, the fall of 2020. And, you know, I'm so grateful that I had been already on this journey of learning to look at myself and my needs as valuable and important and worthy, and so I was able to show up for myself in this huge period of grief for almost like what felt like the first time in so long. I had just always numbed my pain and always avoided those uncomfortable feelings. And, you know, when it's right in front of your face, you can't really run away from it. And I was still drinking at this point, so I mean, you can imagine. And I'm trying to remember, I think we moved November 2020 because Davis and I got our first place together. And that was a very big, that's a dream. We wish we could do it. I don't have a job right now. And we were like, this is kind of out of our price point. And I was learning, just beginning to learn about energetics and the law of attraction and really how to call things in. And I remember us applying for a specific house, and we knew it was a little bit out of our comfort range, but we were like, I think we can do it. And so we did, and we got approved, and it was really tight. But we made it happen, and we were able to move in. And that definitely felt like a blessing in a year that was really fucking hard. And yeah. So like just going into that, and also experiencing, I think actually I had started my Patreon too. So I jumped a little ahead. I think it was the fall of 2020, maybe September 2020. My boyfriend was like, have you ever thought about starting a Patreon? And I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Patreon, but if you haven't, it's like this website where you can host your stuff. And, I thought it would be a perfect place where I could post like, hey, I got my podcast, and I'm just really big about like workbooks and resources and worksheets and meditations. And I wanted to create like a little place where you could subscribe monthly. And I was also doing some art I was creating, and I had made little postcards that I would mail out to people. And I loved it because I got to support a small business printing company. And it was like my first go at entrepreneurship. And I think I got to maybe close to $100 wait. I don't really remember exactly all the numbers, but it was so cool getting like subscribers and actually having like something that I did monthly, and really getting to feel like a taste of what it would look like to work for myself. And I think that too was like a big thing with the back and forth of COVID, just like, well, I don't know if we're going back to work. I don't know if we're doing masks. I don't know if society's going to go back to normal. I really don't want to go back to work if I could get sick and die. And also I just like, discovered my creativity and have been exploring that. And I really don't ever want to have to go work to keep me from doing this again. And those are my reasons. But I love my reasons, and that would also prove to be really challenging for me as I continued on my journey. And so yes, we had moved in the house, the Patreon was going. I was like in these new beginning stages of like, okay, this is what this looks like. I was like trying to record monthly podcasts. I had been regularly posting. I was writing music. I didn't really like anything that I made, but I was posting my mixes. I was just in this really creative flow. And now that I think about it, I need to go backwards again because there's more in October 2020. So I think probably around the time of the Patreon. I actually don't remember. Actually, it was like in the midst of the year of grief. I had gotten a phone call from a friend. Now, I had been posting my mixes as I was learning to DJ. I would just record it and I would post it online on my SoundCloud. And I love that because I got to perfect it, and I could also share mixes that I thought like showcase my sound, and it's art, like this is what I want to share. So I just remember getting this phone call out of the blue from this guy that I had done like a little extracurricular club called Bridge Builders with in high school. And I was like, I don't know why he's calling me. And he was like, hey, I've really been liking everything you've been posting, like all your music and stuff. Would you want a radio show? And I was like, sure. I don't really know what that means, but sure. And so he was like, okay, awesome. Well, since it's a pandemic, we're all doing it mostly virtual. We'll meet in the station, but there's protocol and things like that. So I was like, okay. And I had no idea what I just said yes to. I had listened to the radio, but I didn't really like know what having a radio show meant. And I know you're probably laughing, but I literally just, the way my brain works, I just don't think anything is like I have to teach myself like that things are a big deal. And so I was like, yeah, they just asked me if I wanted a radio show. So I said yes. But that also was like the beginning of like a baby step, I was just feeling inspired to post those mixes. I had no idea that was going to happen. But I was following my creativity, and I was following my joy, and I was following what lit me up. And I was following those intuitive nudges like, hey, put this on the internet. I mean, yeah, of course, I was initially doing it to share it with people who would be able to book me, but you never truly know the impact of what you do, what you share, what you post. And this is just, another testament to that. So, I had started, the radio station started in October of 2020. So I was officially DJing I would bring my little mixer up to the radio station. I was talking on the microphone. This was on FM radio. So if you want to support Memphis music, WYXR is the station that I was a part of, but it's 91.7 wyxr.org. Also, if you want to listen online. But yeah, I was like really stepping into this creative identity that I really had no idea was like this desire of mine until, I was just following the nudges and like the crumbs of like, ooh, I like this music. Ooh, making beats sounds fun. Like, it was always like there, but it was very subtle. And so moving into 2021, I was really getting serious about personal development and really, really just feeling so lit up about everything I was learning and calling into my life. And at the time when the radio station gig happened, I remember thinking when you're on your path, the universe rolls out the red carpet for you. And that really felt like a moment of holy shit, the red carpet literally just got rolled out for me. And I think I need to trust that. I think I'm supposed to like follow that. And so I had been following this creator and I really wanted to take her program. And that program was way more than anything I had ever spent money on ever in my whole life. And, you know, I didn't have a job and I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. And I had thought about it for a while. And I just like, I just remembered that red carpet feeling. And I was like, I think I'm on my path. And I think like I'm meant for more. Like I don't know what it is, but I think I need to do this. And so I found a way to pay for it. And I was able to put it on a credit card, and I'm just thankful for my credit that I had and the buying power that I had with that. And I was like, I feel like I'm free falling and I don't know what's going on. And 2021 was really a year for me, like to move through deep shadows and to really like, because I started that program and I feel like it just very much scorpionic energy, just very much phoenix. Like I'm going to clear everything that doesn't belong here, and you are going to be who you were always meant to be. And I think like the burning part, like when everything's falling away and we don't know what the fuck's going on, yeah, that part is scary. And because it's like we've never known that, we've never experienced that, we've never felt that before. And the things that we are following are like telling us to do all these things, and yet we are feeling so confused on why our life is like becoming painful or challenging or hard, or these feelings of scarcity, like not having enough, not having anything. And those were so many of the shadows that were coming up for me, because I was like, well, I want this really cool creative life and I believe that I'm supported and I can figure it out. And then, you know, when we get clear like that, sometimes those beliefs, that critical voice, you know, those beliefs are like, oh no, you don't. And sometimes when we're calling in really big things, there is like this duality of like almost like a vacuum, like just like sucking like everything in its vortex. But because you are following those nudges and you are following your truth and your joy, only what is true and authentic can move forward, you know? The things that are crumbling and falling away are things that were not founded on good foundation. They were not formed on right thinking, you know? We look back to a lot of our beliefs and where they came from, and it's like those were formed from either people who were projecting their wounds onto us or just crazy things. And as we are like moving through that, it can feel so just, how the fuck am I gonna make it? And you start to cultivate literally from zero a new baby muscle called faith. And you just continue focusing on that muscle and that muscle growing, and trusting that you are connecting to this divine mission, that you're in support from source. And when you step into this divine mission, you are supported and guided. And it might not make any fucking sense. But you keep focusing on that muscle of faith, and you keep focusing on what you know to be true, and that you are really calling in these feelings of feeling free and alive and good in your body, and just having and enjoying a life that you love and that you love to wake up to and to be a part of. And because I was just beginning that journey, I didn't know what the other side would look like. Now that I've been through, several iterations and cycles, I understand the path now. There appears to be these patterns that show up when you are doing things like this, calling things in, because I can look at my life now and I can look at my life then and understand what was happening, and understand that I felt like there was a big grief and there was a big part of me dying. That's what it felt like. And I didn't know how to explain it, but I just only knew it to be like grief, and just really complicated and really heavy. And I just continued to show up for myself emotionally and hold space for my feelings and my experience. And I listened to guided meditations. And I kept trying to create and share about what I was going through on my podcast. I was even beginning to write the earliest affirmations that I have on record, like of that kind of style. Of like, this is my dream, to be able to have a business that can pay me, and my gifts, my creative gifts can pay and afford my lifestyle, and I don't have to work, and my business can. And those were like the dreams. And 2021 is also the year that I would play my first music festival, like I wrote down on a piece of paper. And it's the year that I wrote down that I worked for myself doing what I loved. And 2021 definitely felt, because the whole weed thing, I was like on probation during 2021. So I couldn't smoke. And that's when my hangovers got really bad. But anyways, 2021 was just a very rock bottom energy for me. And, when you're at rock bottom, the only way to go is up. But I really had to look at, I felt stripped down. Like I felt like I was just this raw skin, and I just was exposed. And a lot of, this program I was taking was just asking the really hard questions and asking me what I did want and why I felt I couldn't have it, or why it wasn't available to me. And I was uncovering that I just had a lot of doubt about my creative abilities. And I had so much, I thought everything that I made was stupid. Like that's literally the voice that would happen. And, this is a huge piece of my podcast, like part of my podcast. I talked a lot about the perfectionism of learning to write my own music and getting frustrated. But I just had all of these beliefs that I thought like people hated my music, and people didn't want to see me, and they didn't want to celebrate me, and my music was stupid, and I wasn't very creative. I just was like, holy shit, I felt like I was back alone in my apartment, like, oh my God, you have all these beliefs? Like, where did these come from? And, you know, and then you're able to see all these, but you can like alchemize those, and you can choose not to take those with you. And you can see where they have been passed down to you or projected onto you or screamed at you by society. And you realize that you don't have to hold them, and that you can make new ones. And so this was around the time when I was like, well, what do I want to feel about being an artist, and who do I want to be? And, you know, meanwhile, me trying to, I just did not want to work another job. And I was like literally finding anything else I could do. I was like looking for remote work and really scraping by. But again, I think this was a huge rock bottom for me, and financially, just in many areas of my life. But I think it was just like a clearing. Like I needed to just clear everything that wasn't working and start fresh. And those are kind of the beginnings of when I would build my financial discipline, and worked random jobs, dipping my toe into 1099 work, and really seeing that there was another way to work. You didn't have to like just do a W-2 job, like working for someone else like that. You could be an independent contractor who technically works for themselves, or, you know, things like that. And so I was beginning to just see and have my world open up to all the possibilities that I didn't even know existed. I just always thought I had to go to school and get a job and, you know, do that. And then you grow up and you're like, oh, there's this whole world that the people around me didn't teach me or didn't know about, and I'd much rather do this stuff, you know? And yeah, I'm like, damn, should we do a part 3? I might do a part 3 because I know y'all don't want to listen to 40 million minutes. But yeah, let's stop there. So where were we? End of 21, 22. Yeah. Just, yes, we'll put a pause here and we'll do this for part 2. That's so awesome. My story's so juicy. It needs multiple parts. But yeah, thanks for listening. And I hope that you are just feeling inspired and knowing that you can transform. You can transform. You can transform the shit that you've been carrying, and you can transform it into something beautiful and something that pays you. That's like the coolest part. But yeah, I hope you have an amazing evening, and I will catch you later.